Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Since we finished season 3 last week, today we're taking a short break from our episode by episode discussion, and instead we'll be discussing season 3 holistically. So here we'll start with a brief summary of the season. Season 3 of The Nanny started with a cluck, as Maxwell insisted on taking Fran to meet her long-term pen pal Lenny, giving Niles the opportunity to impersonate Maxwell and to get Cece to cluck like a chicken. Even though Lenny was a bust, Fran still manages to attract a series of serious and not so serious suitors, including fraudster Jules Kimball, mobster Tony Titori, New York Ranger Mike Laveau, cantor Gary Isaac, and stowaway Steve Goodman. Fran actually accepts 3 proposals, including one from Maxwell, but none of them turn into the picture-perfect happily ever after she wanted. As the season progresses, Maxwell becomes increasingly jealous of and threatened by the men courting Fran, worried that she's going to get married and leave him and the children. Outside of her love life, Fran has a very, very busy season. She appears on Jeopardy. She briefly moves into an apartment with Val. She overcomes her shopping addiction. She gets arrested. She contemplates having a baby on her own through artificial insemination. She orchestrates the family's visit to a kibbutz in Israel. She recovers her memory after amnesia, and she helps Maxwell move past a midlife crisis. As to the children, Maggie got to have her sweet 16 at Aunt Frida's. Brighton got a big bar mitzvah-like to-do for his confirmation, and Gracie continues to accurately psychoanalyze those around her. The season ends with Maxwell telling Fran he loves her on their way back to New York from Paris. Bernadette, I know I put a lot in there, but I know there's also a lot I didn't put in there. Is there anything you want to add?
No, you did a really great job because, again, this season, there were 27 episodes total.
There were a lot. There were a lot this
It was
year.
a longer season overall. So, no, I think you did a great job.
Thank you. So I guess we should talk about it a bit holistically. You want to start with some high points or what you thought of as high points in the season?
Yeah. So, I feel like overall, this is without me looking back. Okay. From a, I'm not looking at the numbers comparing the other seasons, but I feel like overall, we probably had a lot more high points in this season than the other two. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I mean, as I talked about a couple weeks ago, I had a string of 5s for like multiple weeks in a row.
Hmm.
And I think that happened. I guess that only happened once, but it was a pretty long streak.
Yeah. And like, I just feel overall we got a lot more development. Now, I will say, just kind of as an observation of this season as a whole, I feel like there are a lot more episodes where we didn't really see the kids, or if we saw the kids, it was either focused on one of the kids or it's just briefly, like in passing, we see the kids.
I
Did you
agree.
get a similar? Okay.
I agree. As I was trying to put together the summary, I like went in my mind episode by episode trying to think, what can I say about Gracie? And I had a
Mhm.
really hard time. I mean, she does continue to psychoanalyze everyone. She actually recommends Fran and her mother go to therapy in Dope Diamond, and they do. But
Mhm.
like there weren't as many episodes centered around her like in season 1 where we had, The Show Must Go On where she was the star of the show. We had Imaginary Friend where Fran accidentally ate her imaginary friend. Here
Mhm.
there wasn't as much. I feel like there was a lot. You're right, there was less focus on the kids in general, and definitely of the kids, Maggie and Brighton got more screen time, more
Yeah.
airtime.
Mhm. Yeah. And to some extent, um, we saw though more Val, I think.
We did.
She was in more episodes than I feel like in the previous 2 seasons.
And she was the focus of more episodes.
Yeah. I mean, we have Fran moving in with her briefly. We have Val's boyfriend.
Yup.
Like, yeah, I feel like there was more Val overall
Mhm.
compared to the others seasons. It's funny too, because now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like there was a little bit more reference to even Morty throughout the season. Again, never see him personally, but like even in Ship of France, like we see the toupee floating in the water.
Right.
Um,
And in the Cantor show, we see his toupee. He dropped a fork, and then
yes,
we see someone bend down to get it and drop his toupee again.
yes. So I feel like a bit more like he exists in the background somewhere.
Right. And actually, also in the episode, the grandmas, uh, it's a major point that Sylvia makes that Morty took his good hair when he
Yes.
left.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, so starting out in terms of high points in this season, I mean, the very first episode is the pen pal. And as you mentioned, um, for anybody trying to refresh their memories, in that episode, one of the iconic scenes is when Niles tricks Cece, because Cece's in Maxwell's office. It's dark. She thinks Maxwell's coming in, and Niles goes with it and tells her to cluck like a chicken, which she does. So that's just like a very iconic way to open the season.
Oh yes, I mean, for those who haven't seen this episode recently, we strongly recommend you go and watch that episode because
Mhm.
it's just so funny. And the like setting for that is that Cece thought Maxwell had asked Cece if she could work on Saturday night, and so she gets the idea from the soap opera that Fran is watching that she's going to seduce him, and so
Mhm.
she shows up in the floor length black gown and that's hanging off her chest, and she's setting up with a fake fire on the television, and she's lighting candles, and it's just, I mean, I could probably recite the dialogue verbatim to you without looking at it, but I
Mhm.
could not do it justice. It is worth going and watching that episode again. Even if you've seen it recently, it's fun. Go watch it.
Mhm.
We'll wait. Not really. You can pause this and come back to us later.
Yeah. So do you have another highlight you want to talk about?
So you actually took the first highlight I wanted to mention, but that's fine. I'll move on. Um, the two Mrs. Sheffields. That's
Mhm.
the episode where we actually get to meet Maxwell's mother. And she and Fran get off on the wrong foot immediately because, I mean, they get off on the wrong foot even before she gets to the Sheffield home because Fran was sent to go get tulips for her boss's mother, and she wanted the old bat to like her. Well, she ran into the old bat who comments on her petroleum product outfit, and it goes from there, culminating in Maxwell asking Fran to marry him in front of his mother.
Mhm.
And that, of course, leads to Fran at her parents' apartment in the white gown, standing on the table, modeling, the bridal gown that, and looking at invitations her mother had printed up, in the 2 hours or so, um, between when Fran called and when she got there. And to your point about Val is there, and Val is actually very insightful because she says to Fran, it's unbelievable. He doesn't even call you by your first name. Fran's like, I know, and you said he hates his mother, and he asked you to marry him in front of her. I know, Val. And then she's like, oh my gosh, he wouldn't have asked me if his mother wasn't there. I can't marry him under false pretenses. And Val's like, "Oh, you think you know someone?" So instead,
Mhm.
Fran messes with Maxwell's head, and there's that iconic scene where he comes to the Fine family home, and you know, he can't figure out what he's supposed to call her. Is it Miss Fine, Fran? And she's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter what you call me. After the wedding night, it'll just be." And he then snaps out of it and calls her Miss Fine. She's like, "Oh, you want to play that game, do you? All right. You're the boss and I'm the nanny. You give me a raise and I'll give you one." And it's just like that great exchange. And then of course she, twists his head and makes him look like Mr. Softy, which is her
Mhm.
plan all along. I mean, that to me, that entire episode is a highlight. Do you have another one?
Well, the ones that really stick out to me are the bookends of this season. Again, we already talked about Pen Pal.
Well,
We just last week talked about A Pup in Paris. Um, and so obviously you have that very last scene in the airplane where they think they're going to die and they finally, you know, kiss again, and then Maxwell says I love you, and then the airbags not the airbags,
The
the
masks.
masks come down, and so the last thing we see is that kind of like freeze frame of them like looking worried.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just iconic. I know we have several episodes like in between that we both gave fives.
We
Um,
do.
so
Um,
you want to kind of maybe talk about it a little bit?
sure. So I'm going to go basically from the beginning of the season and just work our way down.
Okay.
Um, there's the episode "Oy vey, you're gay." We both gave
Mm-hmm.
that a five. That's the episode where Maxwell went to a party and he's very disappointed that no woman talked to him the entire night. And he's sitting down. Fran points towards his lap, and he thinks she's pointing at his private part, shall we say, but she's instead pointing at the wedding ring he's still wearing. And
Mm-hmm.
so he decides to hire a publicist, and he hires Sydney Mercer, and he falls for her. And Fran's worried about her position there, and then it turns out that Sydney was gay and more interested in Fran than Maxwell. And so Fran goes and races to meet him at the Rainbow Room, and the two of them get trapped in an elevator together. And there's that very iconic moment where Maxwell says, so Fran has like, they get stuck in the elevator. Maxwell boosts her up so she's like out, like looking out on top of the elevator, like she's like climbed like halfway out of the elevator, and she's trying to figure out like how to get them out. And
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell says, I'm afraid, Miss Fine, I wouldn't know the right woman if she fell out of the air. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens? Fran drops right next to him.
Yep.
Um, so that one we both gave fives to. Um, we've already talked about the two Mrs. Sheffields. Having his baby, that's the episode where Fran contemplates using artificial insemination to become a mother. And Maxwell gets it in his head that she's going to ask him to, shall we say, contribute the fruit of
Yes.
his looms. Um, she was not planning that, for the
Mhm.
record. Um, but ultimately, so she ends up babysitting the star of one of Maxwell's shows, Small Child. And Fran decides that, I don't want to have a baby by myself. I want someone to be there to share it with. And that way, when the baby's father comes home, I can say, here, you take your turn. I'm going to play Mahjong.
Mhm.
We both like that. We also gave fives to the episode An Offer She Can't Refuse.
Mhm.
Um, that's the one where she briefly dates Gracie's friend's father, who is in the mob.
Oh yeah.
That's Tony Tottori. And she's afraid to break up with him because she's afraid he's gonna put her in a pair of cement Mary Janes.
Mhm.
And ultimately, their relationship ends because Maxwell tells Fran that she should stop chasing men and get men to chase her. And so she says, "All right, I'll give it a try. Your new understudy, he's in the mob." And there's that iconic "Miss Fine," and then he chases her.
Mhm.
Let's see what else. We also both gave fives to the episode "Your Feet's Too Big." That's the
Mhm.
episode where Fran has been invited to a reunion. I think it was a 10-year reunion for her old modeling gig.
Mhm.
And she's concerned about it because her feet seem to have grown a whole size. And that's after that's what Gracie did. Gracie accompanied Fran and Sylvia to the plastic surgeon to hear about Sylvia's plastic surgery options.
Yeah.
Um,
And then she started worrying.
exactly. She started worrying about her skin. Well, first off, she starts fantasizing about having breasts. Then she worries about her skin not being elastic and looking at pictures of herself when she was young and nothing sagged except her
Mhm.
diaper.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and so that episode has that great moment or the great idea of Maxwell taking Fran to the reunion, and all of her friends were under the impression he was her husband. What kind of nut would say a thing like that?
Mhm.
Um, we also both gave fives to Where's the Pearls. That's the episode with Elizabeth Taylor, where Fran, instead of hiring a bonded courier, decides to take the black diamonds, herself via taxi cab, and gets into an accident, hits her head, has amnesia, assumes that she and Maxwell are married, and slips into the tub with him. And at first he's like, "Oh, happy 10th anniversary, darling." And he's like, "No, I can't do this."
Yeah.
Um, and then she slowly remembers what happened. And again, Maxwell chases her.
Yep.
Let's see. I we're getting down to the last few. We also both gave fives to the episode Green Card.
Mhm.
That's the one where we talked about that just a couple weeks ago. That's where Fran gets engaged to Brighton's French tutor.
Mhm.
But it turns out he's a bit of a cad, shall we say.
Yes.
And he makes a pass at Cece, and Niles convinces Cece to tell Maxwell, and that ultimately drives Fran and Maxwell even closer.
Mhm.
And needless to
Yeah.
say, the engagement is off. Um,
Yeah. Cece's none too pleased with Niles
oh
for
no.
suggesting that.
As
And I just love her like saying, I don't have it right in front of me, but what how she says the line like, "There's a man who's interested in me, CC Babcock."
a man wanted me, Cece Babcock, to be his love toy,
Yes.
or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
but she's like me, CC Babcock.
yeah, I mean, in fairness, she should be excited because how often have we seen her really dating 3 seasons in?
Mhm. Well, and
Uh,
she's constantly being put down by Niles, so she has something she can kind of shove in his face.
Correct. Um, that episode ends with, when she's upset with Niles, Niles says to her, "Well, there's no such thing as a perfect plan. Cheers, Kaka."
Yes.
Despite the fact that so his plan worked perfectly.
Yes. Well, cause again, that scene where he comes in to the kitchen after witnessing the French tutor hitting on her, and he says something along the lines of, "Did Kaka do a no-no in the kitchen?" or something like
That's
that.
exactly what he says.
Yeah.
And then the last episode we both gave fives to was A Pup in Paris, the bookend.
Yes.
So I mean,
Yeah.
we started on a high note, we ended on a high note.
Mhm.
I'm now going to ask the flip side. What were some of the low points? I have
Yeah.
one right off the top of my head.
Well, yeah. I know what your low point's gonna be.
Well, then go ahead. I'll let you say because I think it was also your low point.
Well, I had a lower point than that one,
Oh,
so
okay.
I'll
Um,
let you say it.
the 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 animated episode.
Yep, "Oi to the world."
Oi, oi is right. It was out of place. It didn't make sense. It didn't fit in the Nanny overall, and it definitely didn't fit in this season. It felt like a distraction. Um, it was just not fun to watch.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I also put, like, lower than that, the episode Val's Boyfriend, and
yes,
where I really did not like how Fran was being gaslit, um, and, like, victimized, because if you recall, Val's boyfriend hits on Fran, and Maxwell's response is like, "Are you sure that that's
right.
what happened?" And I'm just like, "Ooh, not a great not a great thing, with that." So, that one I had put lower than "Oi to the World."
I had
Just
forgotten that you had put anything lower than Oi to the World because I have not.
yeah. So, I guess, again, I don't like it 'cause, looking back at my previous season stuff, was it season 2, where it was,
Are you thinking about the Chatterbox?
no, 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 no. It's the one where the playwright. It wasn't my lowest, but, like, I was really angry at it. Actually, it
Mhm.
was my lowest. I gave it a revised 1. Um, that's where, again, Fran's old classmate, like, was threatening to jump out the window. Well, first of all, manipulated her into going out on a date with him, and then threatened to jump out the window unless
Right.
she, got him in contact with Maxwell, right? So I guess I guess there's a theme here with me and my lowest rated episodes. It's when there's any kind of like toxic kind of relationship stuff.
Yeah. I was actually going to say, or when they, make light of mental health concerns.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's one of those things that I'd like to think might be different now because society has, I want to say, grown and matured. But um, yeah, I was just gonna say that Oi to the World. for me was the lowest, tied with the Chatterbox, which was also in season 2. And that's
Mhm,
that episode that also to me doesn't fit. It was supposed to be a backdoor pilot to a different show that never
mhm.
went anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of your theme too, like the out of like the ones that just don't fit with
Right.
with everything else that seem kind of out of the, it doesn't flow with everything else.
Exactly. I mean, so I'm looking at the list of episodes from this season. Haha. Um, and like overall, other than, Oi to the World and Val's boyfriend, the season did really well.
Mhm,
We've got mostly fours and fives.
mhm.
There's some threes,
Yeah.
or
It
three and a
looks like
halves.
we both gave the kibbutz 3s.
Yeah. So that was the episode where Fran and ultimately everyone ends up going to the kibbutz because Fran couldn't uh Fran was supposed to convince Maggie to go to a Swiss nunnery over her 3 weeks of winter break. And
Mhm.
Maggie got confused by Fran talking about her time on the kibbutz. And so she thought she was going to a kibbutz. And then, Maxwell agrees, but then Fran realizes, oh no, that's where I lost my hat.
Yep.
And so they all go and they actually see the guy who took Fran's hat, shall we say,
Yep,
um,
and his son.
and his son who offers to take Maggie's hat.
Yes.
And it actually is a hat in that instance.
Yes.
Um, the other Yeah, Val's boyfriend, Oi to the World, and the Kibbutz are the lowest we gave them, episodes we
Mhm,
gave. I Val's apartment got a 3.5 from both of us.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Well, so we mentioned earlier that Val's in this more, but also it looks like the unfortunately for Val, the episodes we've given lowest on our Val's boyfriend and Val's apartment.
it's true, but to make Val feel better, I will point out we did rate other episodes where she's heavily involved more highly. So again, the two Mrs. Sheffields having his baby, she was involved in both of those. She was also on The Party's Over, which we gave 4s to. That's the one where Fran gets arrested for throwing an unlicensed party in the
Oh,
Sheffield
yeah,
home,
yeah. Mhm.
that she threw with Val, and I think Val was one of like 7 women there, and what was it, 40 guys or however many guys they
Yeah.
had.
Mhm.
So she was on that one. She was also on the hockey show, which I gave a 5 to. You gave a 4 to. Um, same deal for Love Is a Many Blundered Thing. That's the one where Fran got Maxwell a really big card, aka a billboard
Oh,
in Times Square,
yeah.
um, when she thought that he was her secret admirer.
Yeah,
So
and we had a very I Love Lucy type of
yes,
scene.
we did. So I
Very
mean, Val also was she went on the cruise with them in Ship of France, even though we don't really see too much of her.
Yes, although she occasionally went through just, commenting how about, how all the guys were apparently
Okay,
gay
yeah,
on
but
the
like
show.
she didn't have her own like plot line there.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah, we definitely see a lot more of her in this season. And not all of her episodes are bad. Just
Yeah, no, it's just ironic, it's not ironic, but funny that literally the title of those episodes are Val's apartment and Val's boyfriend.
agreed.
So,
So
yeah.
I think we've covered now the high points and the low points.
Mhm.
I'm curious. So we've met some new characters who will act. So we've met at least one new character who will reappear, and so I'm curious your thinking or what you're thinking about Aunt Frida.
Ooh, okay. Can you remind me just a little bit? Uh,
Absolutely
she had that feud going on with Sylvia, right?
correct.
And it was
And
her place that Maggie had her Sweet 16, right?
yeah, Tanta Frida's.
Yes. Yes. And she actually is the actress from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right?
Yes,
Okay. So she's going to be coming up. We'll see more of her.
we'll see 2 more episodes with her.
Okay. I mean, again, we to the extent that we only saw her in one episode thus far, I don't know if I have like strongly held opinions about her yet.
Okay.
Obviously, it was interesting to see her dynamic with Sylvia. Um, just how that all started. Um, but yeah, I don't think I have like firmly firm opinions about her yet. Do
Okay.
you? Like just based off of that one episode?
She's very loud, very opinionated.
Oh, well, but that's the
That's the
family.
family. Fair. And
She
actually, I
fits
take it
in with
back.
the family.
I take it back. We actually will see her in 3 more episodes, not
Oh,
2.
okay.
Um, she actually it might be, no, I think it is only 3. We'll see her in Frida Need a Man. We'll see her in the one where the in-laws move in, and I think the ex Niles. So we'll see more of her. Um, I mean, it's interesting to see, as you said, how she interacts with Sylvia. It's interesting to see, um, you know, how we'll learn more about her shall we say her romances. I think we've heard already that she's buried, was it 6 or 7 husbands by this point? So
Mhm.
it anyway, you're not gonna like my next question, which is what did you think of Nigel, Maxwell's brother?
Um,
We've only met him on 1 episode as well, but
yes.
we will see him twice more.
Yeah, again, we I feel like we also like it was somewhat brief because it was just in a pub in Paris, right?
Yep.
So again, we kind of see the initial dynamics we see is like the very much the brotherly like kind of thing because essentially what happens when we meet him is he comes to their hotel room and then ultimately he and Maxwell end up fighting on the bed and
Yes.
Fran needs to intervene. And then we only really then see a brief interaction at his club between him and, Maxwell, where then he takes the check and stuff. So, again, I get the sense he's definitely more of a carefree kind of guy compared to Maxwell. Uh,
Mhm.
again, whether or not that continues or what that means going forward, he's obviously upset their mother, who Maxwell likes very much.
Exactly. I like you very much too, mother.
Yes.
Cut that
Uh,
umbilical cord, huh?
yeah, right. So again, you can tell he's kind of in the role of like the more rebellious younger brother. Um, but we haven't really seen him interact with like the kids or anyone
Correct.
else other than Fran and Maxwell. So,
So, um, I don't want to get too personal, but I've already in at least one of our future fun segments, I have mentioned that we're going to see Nigel again, and he's going to ask Fran to marry him.
mm,
Um, who do you think is a better match for Fran,
oh,
Nigel or Maxwell?
Maxwell.
Okay,
I'm Team Maxwell.
just checking, just checking. Um,
You?
oh, I'm obviously Team Maxwell, but
Uh-huh.
as I think Val's analysis is when that happens is that Nigel is younger and has no kids, so he's
Yeah.
better.
But I wasn't personally too impressed by Nigel. Um,
Okay,
so
that's
Nigel's not
interesting.
really my type.
Okay, and Maxwell is
More
um,
so than Nigel.
fair. I find it interesting that you weren't super impressed by him because I feel like the bar for Nigel was set very low before we get to Paris. In that, like
Oh yeah.
Maxwell's talking about how he's basically blown his inheritance. He's an irresponsible child. He knows nothing about business.
Hmm.
Um, and then we meet him, and yes, I'm also not impressed by them wrestling on the bed. That's childish. But then, like, we see him in at his nightclub, and he's clearly in his element.
Yeah. I mean, I will give it to him. Like he was unfairly characterized because again, I feel like sometimes with family. People kind of like family members kind of get stuck viewing people like other family members in a certain way. That doesn't necessarily translate to how that person is, especially outside of the family, right?
I
So
agree.
sense is that Nigel was always kind of viewed as the rebellious younger brother who doesn't know what he's doing. And he may be more rebellious in the sense that he's not going to follow what is expected of him, but as we saw at the club, he actually does have business sense. And I think that that scene opened up Maxwell's eyes to that. I mean, obviously, he decides, okay, I don't need to be here. He's doing fine. We can go. So I think that is an interesting commentary, though, because I think that happens often. I know, just like personally, sometimes I feel like, um, my sibling might still have a view of me from when we were younger that's not applicable,
Exactly.
but they still
Exactly.
hold on to it.
Right. There's something special about siblings that there's both that it's that they've known you basically your entire life or their entire life. And so
Hmm.
they have so much more insight into who you are, even if that insight is totally dated at this
Yes.
point.
Yeah. Well, especially like as you grow older, and you move to different area, like they don't see you all the time, right? It's not like
Right.
when you were growing up in the same household. So there can be bigger stretches of time before you see each other, and
Mhm.
you're also growing up
Right.
and hopefully maturing.
Right. And so you're growing separately now.
Yes. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. I agree. Um, did you have a favorite of Fran's non-Maxwell suitors?
Let's think.
Deep sigh. Exactly. I put this on my list of questions to talk about, and then I
Yeah.
was like, I should have an answer to this question. And my response to that was,
Well, because obviously,
they're all
they're not
flawed.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like just moving backwards, the most recent one was was his name Philip?
No,
Oh, sorry.
you're skipping one. The most recent one is Steve Goodman,
Yes, Steve Goodman,
the
also known
stowaway.
as Steve Badman,
Exactly.
who's using her for a room
Uh-huh.
and charging all of his stuff to her account. Like, anyway, so and we actually don't see much, aside from like their initial kind of like meeting at the deck. We don't see There's not much like character development in any way.
No, there's none other than he asked her to join the Mambo competition, and then they were gonna have dinner.
Hmm. Yeah. So then green card is the French tutor.
That's Philippe, yes.
Yes, Philippe, the fake. What was the phrase?
Oh,
The philandering.
your French fiancé Philippe is a philanderer.
Yes. So obviously he's a philanderer. Again,
Yes.
using Fran. So no. Um, okay,
Then
going
then then there's the cantor, Gary
Mhm.
Isaac.
Again, and that's where you and I kind of differed on our view of him. Because my sense was again that he was kind of using Fran. And you didn't quite have that same view of him. Um,
Right.
but again, I'm not a fan.
Okay, fair. Also, I mean, he's clearly not ideal because his entire life, all he thought about was, finding someone to settle down, have a family with until he met Fran, and she changed all that.
Yeah, he's just like, oh great.
Exactly. Um, then there's the hockey show where it was Mike Laveau, the
Yeah.
fictitious New York Ranger
Yes.
who
I
calls
did
her a
not
jinx.
again, did not like how he treated Fran, especially like labeling her a jinx for all of
Yes,
New York City.
fair. All right, then we have so then we go all the way up to Tony Chitori, the
Mhm.
mobster.
Yeah, not a fan either in terms of the intimidating factor.
Okay, and the general threat to her life and the
Yeah. Not
fair.
great.
What about Yasi, the guy on the kibbutz who
Again,
took her hat?
yeah, we don't really get much from him. Um, so not,
Yeah, okay.
and he may be married because he has a son. So we don't know his relationship status at the time of when they meet again.
That's
Uh,
fair.
so
Um, what about Sydney Mercer, the
yeah.
PR whiz?
So again, I feel like there wasn't actually like you and I discussed this during the episode. Was I wasn't really happy with how they did that scene where Fran gets that look on her face when the hug's going on
Hmm.
and like stuff like that. That would got a little bit too I don't know. Uh so yeah, I mean I don't know how to say it because I had no problem with Sydney.
So maybe
But
Sydney is your favorite of Fran's suitors.
maybe
I mean, we've got
maybe
we've got
she was perfectly nice. She didn't treat her poorly and she took being turned down well. Like you know what I mean?
yeah, no. I mean, we have I think three others to just go through, but it sort of is seeming like Sydney is top of this list right now.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Um,
she was actually, like, a decent person.
right, she was attractive and she was a professional. Other than the
Mhm,
fact that she wasn't Jewish, she would have made Sylvia very happy.
mhm. And again, didn't use Fran in any kind of way, didn't treat her poorly,
Hmm.
so so,
Okay.
yeah, I guess Sydney Mercer, even though it's not reciprocated at all, on Fran's end of things, is actually a decent suitor, even though
Okay. So
I'm not aware of it until that one scene.
okay. So maybe we stop going through suitors now and just give Sydney the blue ribbon.
Yeah, because who else is there?
There's Jules Kimball, the fugitive in Dope Diamond.
Yeah, there what else is to say there?
Okay, there's Cece's brother, the professor, who gets Fran on Noel Babcock, who gets Fran on Jeopardy.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I guess he would come after Sydney, right?
I mean, he's also not great in that, he's betting against
Yeah,
Cece,
yeah.
and
And
there's
I'm
all those
trying to
weird.
remember how that resolved. Did he just, like, leave?
Fran got on Jeopardy and she won
Uh-huh.
like $100.
Yeah.
And then a year's supply of, was it rice aroni or something?
Mhm.
Um, and then we never see him again.
Yeah. Well, but compared to, like, there's at least 3 criminals that we've gone through
Okay.
this list, and
Okay.
just who didn't treat her poorly.
The last one is Lenny the pen pal, who we never meet.
Ah,
But
who stands her
but
yeah?
but he stuck with her through her fatal attraction to Ben and Jerry, and was interested in meeting her, even though she lied through her teeth about her qualifications and what she did for a living.
Mhm.
She said that she was the fastest woman on earth and thought she pretended to have a gold medal. She pretended to be more popular than she was and appeared on David Letterman. She
Mhm.
told him about her career as an astronaut. Oh, and of course, she had to cancel on him a different time because Miss America, or I think it was Miss America, couldn't fulfill her duties and she had to step in.
Yeah. So, question, was it because again, that was like the first episode of the season. Did he like see her with Maxwell and then
Yes,
decide? Okay.
yes, because he leaves a note for her saying something along the lines of, "Fran, this is my last letter. I saw you with that great looking guy, and I realized I could never compete with him."
Aw.
And Fran, of course, thinks that he walked in the like half a second, half a minute, whatever, that she's like, what are the odds he would come in just when I was in the arms of David? Because
Yeah.
she mistook David Stavros or whatever the guy's name was who had a red rose on his lapel for being Lenny. He was
Uh-huh.
not. He was in the band. And so
Okay. I forgot about Lenny. Lenny goes at the top too because yeah, I feel bad too for Lenny too that he felt like he couldn't even
meet her.
yeah,
Although, in fairness, who could really compete with Maxwell Sheffield?
exactly.
So, I
Exactly.
mean, in that episode, we learned Maxwell has two surefire pickup lines. First one is Maxwell Sheffield, Broadway producer, and the
Yeah.
second one is how do you like your eggs?
Mm,
So,
yeah.
all right, so cool. I'm glad we've decided Sydney Mercer and Lenny the pen pal.
Yeah.
Um, third on
Listeners,
my list.
let us know if you have a favorite suitor who is not Maxwell.
Yes, please do. The other one I would put on my list is Mike Laveau, just because he was a New York Ranger.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
so, and you're right, he was not very. He does take back the whole Jinx thing. He does publicly apologize to her on the
But
air
that's
and
after she threatened him with that dance.
with the striptease. Yes, the iconic striptease.
Full of bad luck.
Yes, she scared the crap out of him with the striptease, and she's like, "Wait a minute, that came out wrong."
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so do we want to talk about any other character development? I mean, we've kind of jumped around a bit, and I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Hmm.
Um, but is there any character development you want to specifically point out or commend or um, demote? I guess.
Yeah. So again, to some extent, with the kids, um, like it seems Maggie's just constantly in this role of like having all these boyfriends, right?
Hmm.
Brighton still is put it has those awkward scenes at time where he's like very sexualized.
Hmm.
Um again, just recently there was that scene where he was like hugging Fran and they made it very awkward by implying that he was trying to like feel her, and it's like, ugh,
Right, and there's
we
also
don't need that
earlier.
element here.
Right, earlier in the season, when Fran's getting ready for a date. This is in episode Val's apartment. Fran is getting ready, and Brighton just walks in, and she says, "You're not 5 years old anymore. You can't just walk in." And he says, "I. That's because I'm not 5 years old anymore. That's why I don't knock,"
Hmm.
or something like
There's
that. And it's just
there's
like,
also a ship of Fran's when they're in the office trying to convince Maxwell to do something like a bar mitzvah, and then he's like hugging her before he leaves, and there's just an exchange, and I'm like, "Ugh."
yeah, that's right. Today I am a man.
Yeah.
Or even in Unkindest Cut when he's playing with the camcorder, he focuses in on her breasts, and like
Hmm.
it's awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something I should have put in the season summary, that Brighton got his first job. He was a videographer for a bris, and it did not go
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, it absolutely did not go well.
Um, so on the character development front, I I like that we're seeing more struggle in Maxwell about like his feelings for Fran, and him sort of, but he's still not willing to admit it.
Yeah. Well, it seems again very much two steps forward, three steps back, two steps forward, one
Hmm.
step back. Like it's between episodes, like you feel like there's ground gained and then you're suddenly not there anymore.
Correct. Correct. And that, unfortunately, dear listeners, will continue. Um, but yeah, so I'm curious. So I know where things are going. Some of our listeners know where things are going. Where do
Mhm.
you think they are going? Like, what do you think we're
Oh,
going to see next season? And if you want, even in seasons beyond season 4.
well, again, since I know how many seasons are left, I feel like that informs me kind of projection
Hmm.
wise because I feel like again, we left season 3 on this I love you. So I know probably, and I haven't seen the first episode of season 4 yet. So
Good.
there's gonna have to be a big backtrack on that in some respect. Um, or some point in season 4. Like I don't think they're getting married in season 4. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we still are in for quite the ride of the push and pull, getting, two steps forward, one step back kind of thing. But I mean, they're end game, so that
One true pairing. Is that the
yes.
phrase?
They're the OTP.
Exactly. Um, okay. I'm I'll go so far as to agree with you that yes, there's a lot more push and pull, and we're gonna see Fran date other people and things
Well,
like that.
obviously Nigel's going to be proposing to her at some point too. So
Correct. That's next season actually.
I'm going to be curious again, at when we do the season 4 wrap up, how many suitors we can talk about, and if they're any more decent than the ones from this
Well,
season.
there's Nigel. There's Nigel. Um,
Hmm.
there's the cousin Fran dates. Um, I'm not going to go too far into this because I don't want to step on our future fun. Um, but those are the two that stick in my mind in the next season.
Hmm.
There's a bank robber.
Okay, so we still get some criminals.
Yeah. Um, those are the ones that stick out to me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So,
yeah.
did you have any other characters you wanted to discuss?
No, those were the two that came to mind as people we met this season. Oh, you mean for character development? Sorry.
Yes.
Fran. I think we're seeing Fran is also developing and becoming more well-rounded and less. I don't want to say severe because I don't think that's the right word to describe her, but she's becoming kind of like what we saw at the end of season 1 when Danny Imperiali tried to get her to marry him and to take him back. She realizes she's become more cultured and can't date that kind of person
Yeah.
because she's grown and matured.
Yeah, I will say in terms of character development, we've already kind of touched on this earlier, but I feel like in some of the episodes there were actually kind of like character blips or like where they were out of character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like again, we didn't really like in that episode where they treat Fran like she's so stupid, and they're betting on her whether or not she can make it to Jeopardy.
Right.
Again, Maxwell's whole attitude toward Fran when she's trying to say Val's boyfriend hit on me. Are you sure? Like again, like there are times when they're out of character, it seems to me. Um, but overall, like you said, and how we've discussed, there have been some developments through this season. I'm hoping that there's more development for the kids in some respects. But yeah.
On the note of kids, I mean, early on in season 4, Maggie is going to date someone who's 25.
Oh, so you'll know
You're,
my opinion.
yeah, I was going to say you're not going to care for that too much. We're going to see, Gracie be very perceptive and see that there's something between her father and Fran, and say like, I don't want things to change because if things go poorly, that's not going to go well. Like, so we see that. Um, we see. I'm trying to think what other things do we see with the kids. We see Maggie get a job. Um, and yeah, I mean those are the things that strike me for next season.
Hmm.
Um, oh, also we learned that Brighton serves as Fran's accountant, and he is not a happy camper when she gets audited.
Hmm.
So yeah, shall we jump into some fashion?
Sure.
So according to the wardrobe files on YouTube, Fran wore 127 outfits, including 29 animal print, 35 layered vests, 63 skirt suits, 15 sweater and mini skirts, and 17 matching sets.
Wow.
I watched the video a couple times and I think they actually missed some things. I think they missed a few of her bathrobes, and they definitely missed the first dress she contemplated wearing to the premiere in fashion show. And
Mhm.
they also missed the outfits she wore in her imagination during Pen Pal, like the dress she wore to be on David Letterman, and the astronaut suit, and her Olympic attire. But
Mhm.
still, I mean, so basically she wore over 130 outfits, 130 different ensembles
Mhm.
during the season. Are there any that stick in your mind as iconic?
I feel very overwhelmed.
Okay, fair. There's a lot to pick from.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I basically jotted down some that I thought were iconic, some that I considered my favorites, and some that I disliked. There's a lot of overlap between the iconic and favorite for
Mhm.
me. Um, so iconic, I thought the like periwinkle satin floor length nightgown, negligee, and robe that Fran wore in Val's apartment, the episode of Val's apartment. She has her hair down and her mother shows up and asks, "Where are your earrings?" And she has her earrings on and she's sleeping in a full face of makeup because she
Mhm.
doesn't want, if there's a fire, she doesn't want the
Oh, yeah,
firemen
the
climbing over
fireman.
her to save the 15-year-old heiress.
Yeah.
To me, that was iconic. The floor length gown, the pink floor length gown Fran wore in Oy Vey, You're Gay, that we've already talked about, that part where she's stuck in the elevator and the roof of the elevator and then falls. To me, that's iconic. Um, the two gowns that Fran actually did wear in fashion show. There's the one that was the leopard print, and that totally clashed with the red purse, which got her in the
Oh, yeah.
as a fashion don't. And then what she was wearing as a fashion do, with that hot pink dress with the pink um shawl, pink like tulle shawl with the flowers. Um, Fran, I'm gonna just keep going until you jump in
Yeah.
with
No,
something.
you
Okay.
you go ahead.
Fran's most fabulous dress she owns, that very tight, very sexy red dress from Love is a Many Blundered Thing for Valentine's Day. That to me is iconic. Her, as Cece put it, the Reynolds Wrap collection dress, um, as well as the striptease we've already talked about, both from the hockey show,
Mhm.
um, from Ship of Fran's, that color block dress she's wearing on the island, and her bikini to me are both iconic. Um, Less so, I'll just mention the black, red, and green outfit she's wearing in Dope Diamond to go meet Jules, and her mother's like tugging at the skirt, and Maxwell's like, "Oh, she's a mother. She's just pulling down your skirt." Like, and Fran's like, "She's my mother. She's hiking it up." And then,
Mhm.
Sylvie convinces her to show some décolletessen and lower her neckline. Um, and then also the skiing outfit Fran bought in Shopaholic, the purple one with the like fake fur trim.
Oh,
To me,
yeah.
those are all iconic.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Um, and then for me, she does continue her trend of wearing different bathrobes throughout the
Yep.
season. There were several that she wore a couple of times. The ones with like the flowers she wore several
Hmm.
times. And then that episode with her sister, they had like matching, just different color robes. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was season 2.
Sorry.
It's okay. It is notable,
Yeah.
since that's the only time we meet Nadine as an adult.
Yeah. So, yeah. Again, I feel like generally her fashion, we can kind of tell what is her fashion. Like she has those different multi-piece outfits, and there is, the black and white, or, you know, checkers, or like the color blocks, all of that.
Hmm.
So, yeah. Um
Is there?
oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, is there any fashion that you like, that you'd consider like that you liked, like your favorite fashion that I haven't covered already?
Um Again, nothing immediately comes to mind, just because, as I've mentioned before, I don't pay too much to attention to fashion in my day-to-day life. So like we'll talk about it in like an episode, right?
Mhm.
But then, except for like, again, the first episode of season 1, that red dress going down the stairs. That's very iconic. That sticks in my mind. But otherwise, it's not really
Well,
stuck there.
so basically what you're saying is the series has a challenge to get other fashion stuck in your mind.
Sure.
Okay,
Because
the
again,
series
I know,
accepts.
yeah, like I know generally, like I mentioned, there's things that she tends to wear. And I
Mhm.
like some of that, but I couldn't tell you a specific piece from a specific episode, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I can keep talking. You're
Go
like
ahead.
listeners are like, shocker, Debbie does so much talking. She should shut up. Sorry, guys. I just have two pieces of favorite fashion I want to mention from this season. Which is interesting to me because they're both white. One is the white suit with black trim that she wears from the two Mrs. Sheffields from the scene I quoted earlier, where Maxwell protests. But we're in your mother's home, so the couch has protection. Is her response. And then the white jacket and dress that has flowers on it that she wears in the Unkindest Cut when they're in Hollywood when she gets kicked off the Dr. Quinn set for mistaking the fake bathroom as a real bathroom.
Hmm.
Um, I like those, and I didn't mention them previously. And then I do have some I disliked, um,
Yeah.
particularly the petroleum product that Maxwell's mother comments on in the episode "The Two Mrs. Sheffields." It's that plastic black jacket with the plasticky red skirt. Not very attractive. Doesn't look very comfortable. Probably makes a lot of noise as she moves. I don't care for that. I also don't care for the yellow like sweatsuit that she wears in fashion show when she's depressed about being a fashion don't. And then finally, I also didn't care for, and I mentioned this last week, I didn't care for the orange pants and jacket that she wears on the flight to Paris in a pup in Paris. So
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I don't really like those petroleum kind of looking um outfits. And yeah, that orange one from Up Up in Paris was not really a fan.
oh, I know an iconic dress that I really thought I had on my list, but I guess I didn't. The floor length dress she wears in A Pup in Paris. To me, that is an iconic, gorgeous gown. The one she wears
To the club.
to the club and then on the airplane.
Hmm.
And her hair looks fantastic. It's like up and big. And anyway, I should mention that as well. That's iconic and gorgeous. So, all right, I'm out of fashion.
Okay.
So, some notable New Yorkers. Is there anyone in particular you want to talk about?
Hmm. I'm trying to think back because again, we've had a variety of people who have kind of popped in. Again, it's still random that we had the Clinton brother.
It's funny. He's on my list. We're gonna see him. I think we see him once more. I think. But we do see in season 6, there's an episode with Bill and Hillary Clinton in air quotes. They're actors playing the
Right.
first lady and the president.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Let's see here. Cause so Cece's brother was played by, is it Michael Keaton? Is that his name?
I'm really bad with actors.
He played what's his name? Why am I Mr. Green in Clue? That's where I know him best from. Um, and then we already talked about the actress from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, who's
Mhm.
Aunt Frida. Um, who else was I'm trying to think. We had Rosie O'Donnell as the taxi driver.
Yep, and
Who-
Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, we did have Elizabeth Taylor. Um, is there anybody that really comes to your mind, like going back through like the
Elizabeth Taylor was the other one I was going to mention, and I take it back. Roger Clinton has now been in every episode that he was on. So
Gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, guys. You'll just have to wait to see the fake Clintons in season 6. Yeah, Elizabeth Taylor is the one that came to mind, and Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Rosie O'Donnell is actually in another episode um, next season, I believe, in the Rosie show.
Okay.
Um, I mean, they're constant references to Barbara Streisand and Julie Weber. There will be
Oh
more
yeah.
of those as we
It's
continue.
yeah. Again, I don't think we could even track it at this point.
No, no, it's too late. Eartha Kitt was in last week's episode, so she's worth noting. Um, I mean, it's really amazing how many stars actually guest on the
Yeah.
show, like throughout the series.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, those are the folks who stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
All right, shall we jump to Yiddish?
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned last year, I'll mention, or at the end of the last season, I'll mention again that the constant violations of kashrut definitely sticks in my craw. Um, if that hasn't been obvious to you guys, um, I looking back on it, that's something that now that I'm watching it with a critical eye, that bugs me. Um, I will say we did see the most Jewish show. I would say the most Jewish show of the series this season. That was the Cantor show where Fran, they go to synagogue. We see the rabbi, the cantor, the bima, the Israeli flag. We see the yarmulkes and excuse me, we see all of that. We hear Gary singing in Hebrew. Um, you know, she dates the cantor, as we know. Um, for Bacharach. Oh, he's another star. Um, but yeah, so that I think is like probably the most Jewish episode of the series. We did also get to attend a bris, which
Hmm.
Brighton did not know what that was, and when he learned, it was somewhat traumatizing for him, shall we say?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's all worth noting. I mean, we've all learned some more Yiddish, and we'll continue
Hmm.
to do so as the series continues.
Yeah. So how about some 90s nostalgia? Um, I guess in general, do you feel like this series is dated or does it not feel dated?
That's a really good question. I was sort of thinking about this the other day, and like I was watching a different like late 90s early 2000s sitcom, and as I was watching that I was like, ugh, this feels so dated. Like only one person has a cell phone and it's like all they can do is make phone calls. Like what the heck. um but but like when I watch The Nanny, I don't feel that way, probably
Mhm.
because it's my go-to. It's like
Yeah.
my comfort viewing. And I know we talk about this every week. We talk about um you know different things that wouldn't happen now, or how dated certain attire is, or certain plot points. But like if I'm watching it, I don't feel like it's dated. What do you
Hmm.
think?
Yeah, it's kind of I think and on an individual episode basis, there are some episodes that feel more dated than others, right? In terms of
Hmm.
plot points or how they're addressing certain topics. But overall, it just feels like a sitcom. It has
Hmm.
those beats to it that I think are a bit timeless. Like just how, again, similar, like we still watch like I Love Lucy to this day, even though that was like in the 50s, 60s. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so so there's definitely like times like the fashion and like the setting of places seem very dated.
Hmm.
But again, still enjoyable to watch today.
Agreed. Agreed. So kiss count, we're still at 12, I think.
Yes.
Which
We
I
made
looked
a lot of headway in the kiss count this season.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, because I looked back at my notes from the season 2 recap, and at the end of season 2, we were at, I believe, a kiss count of 4.
Wow.
So
So,
we got pretty far.
yeah.
Um, so let's talk about some future fun, and then we'll talk about episodes to be re-rated. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have other Jewish themed episodes coming up. Next season we have the Passover story, and in season 6 we have the Hanukkah story. So those are based circling around Passover and Hanukkah. We will see. If you recall in Shopaholic, the reason Fran started shopping like a maniac was because Danny, her ex fiance, got engaged to Heather Biblow, and then we learned um, in having his baby that he and Heather had a baby. Um, so I just want to let people know we're not done with them. We're not done with Danny and Heather. We're actually going to meet Heather next season.
Mhm.
Danny dies, but that's okay.
What?
I want to say that's okay, but that's probably a little callous. But no, he leaves Heather a widow, which is how we see Heather, and we go to his funeral and whatnot. Um, Kind of to the point where I asked you, like, we haven't really seen Cece date too much. She gets a boyfriend.
Woo.
Um, don't worry for anyone who's not interested in her dating someone who isn't Niles. Don't worry, it doesn't last too long. Um, so you mentioned that we see Maggie doing a lot of dating, as I think I've mentioned previously. In season 6, we see her get married, which is sort of crazy because like she's 14 when we start.
Mhm.
Um, and then finally, Maxwell's going to propose to Fran, I think 3 more times. And when he
Wow.
gets out of his offered commitment to her yet again, and one of those
Wow.
times he realizes that he might not actually have wanted out. So
Mm.
that I think that's I think that's I think that's season 5. So
Okay.
that's, you know, 2 seasons from now. Yeah, that's season 5. So yeah, we've got a lot of fun ahead of us. And I really look forward to continuing this journey with all of you.
Mhm.
So so let's get to episode ratings and re-ratings. Are there any episodes you want to change your rating on?
So again, I'm not this time around, I'm not as passionate about doing it, but retrospectively, I would probably put Oy vey you're gay at a 4.5 instead of a 5.
Okay.
Um, just because again, like I wasn't too thrilled with some of the, I don't know, like how they handled some of it.
Hmm.
Um, and then retrospectively again, I think I would agree with you on Ship of France. It's probably more of a 4.5 than a 5.
Huh.
Other than that, I don't nothing really sticks out to me as like changing. Um, how about you?
So because we make the rules and can do whatever we want, I want to actually change the rating from season 1.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
so back in season 1, I gave the episode The Butler, the husband, the wife, and her mother a 2.5. And I watched it recently. Like, I just wanted something on in the background, and I didn't want it to be one of the episodes we were going to talk about soon because I wanted to like not really pay that close attention, but I just wanted something on, and I was laughing out loud.
Mhm.
For those who don't remember, this is the episode where Maxwell takes the kids to the museum, and Fran's mom shows up and basically shortly, and she has told Fran's uncle and cousin that Fran eloped with a millionaire Broadway producer and is living like, living like a queen. And well, then they show up, and Fran's like, I'm not gonna lie for you. But then her uncle and her cousin are like, so you finally caught yourself a husband. Thank God you're not an old maid anymore.
Uh-huh.
And they refuse to leave until they meet the husband and the kids. And Niles makes the mistake of walking into the room, and so Fran has him pretend to be Maxwell, and then the kids in Maxwell, actually before the kids in Maxwell show up, representatives from the National Butlers Association or whatever, International Butlers Association show up, and anyway, it just becomes this whole like sordid thing where everyone's pretending to be someone they're not, and they almost get away with it until Cece arrives and blows everyone's cover. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I wanted to go back and give that a 4 because it
Yay,
it
because
was
I gave a 4.75,
yeah,
so
you
you're
did.
getting closer to me.
Yeah. But looking at season 3, I mean, most of my ratings are 4s or 5 are over a 4, and a
Yeah,
lot of them are
except for the
5s.
one on Oy Vey or
Yeah,
Oy Vey to the World.
yeah, that one just totally throws off all of my ratings, like the average of my ratings. Um, so before we started today, um, as usual, my rating is slightly higher than yours,
Yes.
but before we started today, your average was 4.21
Uh-huh.
and mine was 4.4.
Yeah.
Um, which I'll point out is higher than the last 2 seasons for I think
Mhm.
both of us. So for season 2, I averaged 4.12 and you averaged 4.03, and
Mhm.
for season 1, uh, you averaged 3.8 and I averaged 3 yeah, you averaged 3.81 and I averaged 3.82.
Yeah. So
So
it's getting higher each season so far. I guess we'll see how season 4 treats us.
we will. Um, yeah, so I'm having a blast doing this with you, so thank you for, doing this with us.
Yeah.
Um, is there how would you rate the season as a whole if you had to give it a 1 to 5?
Yeah, I mean, um I think my average is probably right there,
Okay.
like slightly above a 4. My problem is I don't know what's coming, Debbie. I don't have like the foreknowledge you do. So, it could be that another season I like more coming up. So, for now I'll stick with what my average is. How about you?
So if I could just, like, erase "Oi to the World," which I do in my mind, like, I just
Mhm.
pretend it doesn't exist, to me, this season gets a 5. I
Okay.
think I think this is my favorite season of the series, because there are just so many episodes that are just so much fun to watch. I mean, we've already talked about the high points, and those are them. And
Mhm.
even some of those that we didn't talk about, those that just got 4s or, a 4 from you and a 5 from me or vice versa, like, they're just fun to watch, and I just this is, I think, my favorite season of the series. Um, so yeah, I'd give the season a 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanna talk about?
I don't believe so.
Alright. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Now that we're halfway through the series, we're going to take a short break. Please join us in the new year when we pick back up with our podcast and discuss episode 76, The Tart with Heart.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at a fine time nanny revisited at gmail.com. Have a great week.